Hello and welcome to this session where we're going to cover Python interviews. It's of the essence for us for you to make sure that you nail your interview and do great in it. So we're going to go through some technical questions that usually happen within the Python interview. Nonetheless, we've also included some examples, some code segments, some syntax to just make sure that it explains a little bit more in case you need to review it. Also, we start with a couple of slides to remind us of the different kind of core and basic information in Python that's going to definitely come up in your interviews. Enjoy and best of luck.
As a Python developer, what do you find are some of the benefits of Python? Python is an object-oriented programming language with objects, modules, threads, exceptions, and automatic memory management. The benefits of Python are that it is simple and easy, portable, extensible, built-in data structures, and it's open source. Do you have any experience with PEP8? Do you know what PEP8 is? PEP8 is a coding convention, a set of recommendations about how to write Python code more readable. In an interview, you're more than likely to be asked about the IDE that you use. So here are some of the top Python interactive development environment IDE platforms. What is pickling and unpickling? Pickle module accepts any Python object and converts it into a string representation and dumps it into a file by using dump function. This process is called pickling, while the process of retrieving original Python objects from the stored string representation is called unpickling. In an interview, you're more than likely to be asked about the web frameworks that you work with. To name a few, here are some of the top Python web frameworks, including the Django, Flask, and Pyramid. Do you know how Python is interpreted? Python language is an interpreted language. Python program runs directly from the source code. It converts the source code that is written by the programmer into an intermediate language, which is again translated into machine language that has to be executed. How is memory managed in Python? Python memory is managed by Python private heap space. All Python objects and data structures are located in a private heap. The programmer does not have access to this private heap, and the interpreter takes care of the Python private heap. The allocation of Python heap space for Python objects is done by the Python memory manager. The core API gives access to some tools for the programmer to code. Python also has an inbuilt garbage collector, which recycles all the unused memory and frees the memory and makes it available to the heap space. What are the tools that help to find bugs or perform the static analysis? PyChecker is a static analysis tool that detects the bugs in Python source code and warns about the style and complexity of the bug. PyLint is another tool that verifies whether the module meets the coding standards. In the interview, we're more than likely going to be asked about the basic and core components of the Python language. So it's important to review some of those. What are Python decorators? A Python decorator is a specific change that we make in Python syntax to alter functions easily. What's the difference between list and tuple? The difference between list and tuple is that list is mutable while tuple is not. Tuple can be hashed, for example, as a key for dictionaries. In the interview, we're more than likely to be asked about the basic and core components of Python. So here's an additional slide to that. How are arguments passed by value or by reference? Everything in Python is an object, and all variables hold references to the objects. The reference values are according to the functions. Therefore, you cannot change the value of the references. However, You can change the object if it is mutable. How would you distinguish or define dict and list comprehensions? They are syntax constructions to ease the creation of a dictionary or list based on existing iterables. What built-in types does Python provide? Python provides two built-in types, mutable and immutable. Mutable built-in types include lists, sets, dictionaries. Immutable built-in types, strings, tuples, and numbers. Immutable built-in types are strings, tuples, and numbers. In an interview, more than likely, are going to be asked about standard libraries and functionalities. So this includes a list of general functionality as well as datetime processing. How would you explain namespace in Python? In Python, every name introduced has a place where it lives and can be hooked for. This is known as a namespace. It's like a box where a variable name is mapped to the object placed. Whenever the variable is searched out, this box will be searched to get the corresponding object. What is lambda in Python? Lambda in Python is a single expression anonymous function, often used as inline function. Why is it that lambda forms in Python do not have statements? A lambda form in Python does not have statements as it is used to make new function object and then return them at runtime. How would you explain pass in Python? In Python, pass means no operation Python statement, or in other words, it is a placeholder in a compound statement where there should be a blank left and nothing has to be written there. In Python, what are iterators? In Python, iterators are used to iterate a group of elements, containers, like a list. What is the unit test in Python? A unit testing framework in Python is known as unittest. It supports sharing of setups, automation testing, shutdown code for tests, aggregation of tests into collections, and more. Explain slicing in Python. A mechanism to select a range of items from sequence types like list, tuple, strings is known as slicing. What are generators in Python? The way of implementing iterators are known as generators. It is a normal function except that it yields expression in the function. What is docstring in Python? A Python documentation string is known as docstring. It is a way of documenting Python functions, modules, and classes. How can you copy an object in Python? To copy an object in Python, we can try the copy function or the decopy function for general cases. We cannot copy all objects, but most of them. What is negative index in Python? Python sequences can be indexed in positive and negative numbers. For positive index, 0 is the first index, 1 is the second index, and so forth. For the negative index, -1 is the last index, and -2 is the second last, and so forth. How can you convert a number to a string? In order to convert a number into a string, you can use the inbuilt function string, str. If you want an octal or hexadecimal representation, use the inbuilt function oct or hex. What is the difference between xrange and range? Xrange returns the xrange object, while range returns the list and uses the same memory and no matter what the range size is. What is a module and a package in Python? In Python, a module is the way to structure a program. Each Python program file is a module, which imports other modules like objects and attributes. The folder of Python program is a package of modules. A package can have modules or subfolders. What are the rules for local and global variables in Python? Local variables, if a variable is assigned a new value anywhere within the function body, it's assumed to be local. Global variables, those variables that are only referenced inside a function and are explicitly global. How can you share global variables across modules? To share global variables across modules within a single program, we create a special module. Import the config module in all modules of our application. The module will be available as a global variable across modules. How can you make a Python script executable on Unix? To make a Python script executable on Unix, you need to do two things. Script files mode must be executable, and the first line must begin with the hash. Explain how to delete a file in Python. We can use either commands, the os.remove function or the os.unlink function. How can you generate random numbers in Python? To generate random numbers in Python, you need to import the command as import random, which then returns a random floating point number in the range, as shown. How can you access a module written in Python from C? You can access a module written in Python from C by following this method. Module is equal to PyImport and then the import module function, as shown. What is the use of the double slash operator in Python? It is a floor division operator, which is used for dividing two operands with the result as a quotient showing only digits before the decimal point, as shown. Mention 5 benefits of using Python. Here are 5 benefits of using Python. Number 1, Python comprises of a huge standard library for most internet platforms like email, HTML, and more. Python does not require explicit memory management as the interpreter itself allocates the memory to new variables and free them automatically. Number 3, provide easy readability due to use of square brackets. Number 4, easy to learn for beginners. Number 5, having the built-in data types saves programming time and effort from having to declare variables. What's the use of the split function in Python? The use of the split function in Python is that it breaks a string into shorter strings using the defined separator. It gives a list of all words present in the string. Explain Flask and its benefits. Flask is a web micro framework for Python based on WorksEgg, Jinja 2, and Good Intentions BSD license. WorksEgg and Ninja 2 are two of its dependencies. Flask is part of the micro framework, which means it will have little to no dependencies on external libraries. It makes the framework light, while there is little dependency to update and less security bugs. What is the difference between Django, Pyramid, and Flask? Flask is a micro framework primarily built for a small application with simpler requirements. In a Flask, you don't have to use external libraries. Flask is ready to use. Pyramids are built for larger applications. It provides flexibility unless the developer used the right tools for their project. The developer can choose the database, URL structure, templating style, and more. Like Pyramid, the Django can also be used for larger applications. It includes an ORM. What is the Flask-WTF and what are their features? Flask-WTF offers simple integration with WT forms. Features included within the Flask-WTF include number 1, integration with WTF forms. Number 2, secure form with CSRF token. Number 3, global CSRF protection. Number 4, internalization integration. Number 5, reCAPTCHA support. Number 6, file upload that works with Flask uploads. Explain what is the common way for the Flask script to work. The common way for the Flask script to work is either it should be the import path for your application or the path to a Python file. Explain how you can access sessions in Flask. A session basically allows you to remember information from one request to another. In a Flask, it uses a signed cookie so the user can look at the session contents and modify it. The user can modify the session if only it has the secret key flask.secretKey. Is Flask an MVC model? Basically, Flask is a minimalistic framework that behaves same as MVC framework. So MVC is a perfect fit for Flask. For your reference, we have an example below that shows the MVC pattern for an application. Explain database connection in Python Flask. Flask supports database-powered applications, RDBMS. Such a system requires creating a schema, which requires piping the schema.sql file into a SQLite 3 command. So you need to install SQLite 3 command in order to create or initiate the database in Flask. Flask allows to request databases in 3 ways: the before request, after request, teardown request. Before request, it is called before a request and passes no arguments. After request, it's called after the request and passes the response that will be sent to the client. And then the teardown request, it is called in a situation when exception is raised and response is not guaranteed. If you have multiple Memcache servers and one of them fails that contain data, will it try to get them? The data in the failed server won't get removed, but there is a provision for auto failure, which you can configure for multiple nodes. Failover can be triggered during any kind of socket or Memcache server level errors, and not during normal client errors like adding an existing key. Explain how you can minimize the Memcache server outages in your Python development. When one instance fails, several of them goes down. This will put a larger load on the database server when lost data is reloaded as the client makes a request. To avoid this, if your code has been written to minimize cache stampedes, then it will leave a minimal impact. Another way is to bring up an instance of Memcache on the new machine using the lost machine's IP address. Code is another option to minimize server outages, as it gives you the liberty to change the Memcache server list with minimal work. Setting timeout value is another option that some Memcache clients implement for Memcache server outage. When your Memcache server goes down, the client will keep trying to send a request till the timeout limit is reached. Explain what is Dogpile effect. How can you prevent this effect? Dogpile effect is referred to the event when cache expires and websites are hit by multiple requests made by the client at the same time. This effect can be prevented by using a semaphore lock. In this system, when the value expires, the first process acquires the lock and starts generating a new value. Explain how Memcache should not be used in your Python project. Here are the ways you should not use Memcache in your Python project. Memcache's common issue is to use it as a data store and not as a cache. Never use Memcache as the only source of the information you need to run your application. Data should always be available through another source as well. Memcache is just a key or value store and cannot perform query over the data or iterate over the contents to extract information. Memcache does not offer any form of security, either in encryption or authentication. What is Python if statement? Python if statement is used for decision-making operation. It contains a body of code that runs only when the condition given in the statement is true. If the condition is false, then the optional else statement runs, which contains some code for these conditions. When you want to justify one condition while the other condition is not true, then use the Python if-else statement. And as you can see, we have some examples for your revision. Explain while loop in Python. While loop does the exact same thing as the if statement does. But instead of running the code block once, they jump back to the point where it began the code and repeat the whole process again. Below, for your reference, you're going to see the syntax and an example of the while loop. What is enumerate in Python? Enumerate in Python is a built-in function used for assigning an index to each item of the iterable object. It adds a loop on the iterable object while keeping track of the current item and returns the object in an enumerable form. This object can be used in a for loop to convert it into a list by using the list method. We've included an example for your reference. How can you use the for loop to repeat the same statement over again? You can use the for loop for even repeating the same statement over again. As you can see in this example, we have printed out the word Kinzitech 3 times. The example below is for your reference. What is tuple matching in Python? Tuple matching in Python is a method of grouping the tuples by matching the second element in the tuples. It is achieved by using a dictionary by checking the second element in each tuple in Python programming. However, we can make new tuples by taking portions of existing tuples. Below, you can see the syntax. Explain dictionary in Python. A dictionary in Python is the unordered and changeable collection of data values that holds key value pairs. Each key value pair in the dictionary maps the key to its associated value, making it more optimized. A dictionary in Python is declared by enclosing a comma-separated list of key value pairs using curly braces. Python dictionary is classified into 2 elements, keys and values. We included the syntax and example for your reference. How can you copy the entire dictionary to a new dictionary? Yes, you can also copy the entire dictionary to a new dictionary. For your reference, we've placed the example below where we have copied our original dictionary to the new dictionary named Boys and Girls. How can you update a Python dictionary? You can update a dictionary by adding a new entry or a key value pair to an existing entry or by deleting an existing entry. For your reference, we've created the example below, and in the example, you will add another name, Sarah, to our existing dictionary. Give an example of a dictionary item method. For your reference, we've created the dictionary items method. How can you sort elements in Python dictionary? In the dictionary, you can easily sort the elements. For example, if you want to print the name of the elements of our dictionary alphabetically, we have to use for loop. It will sort each element of the dictionary according. We've included an example for your reference. Give an example of dictionary len and Python list comp methods. For your reference, we've created two examples, one for the dictionary len and one for the comp. What are all dictionary methods? The list of dictionary methods includes copy, update, items, sort, len, comp, string. How could you explain arithmetic operators in Python? Arithmetic operators perform various arithmetic calculations like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, modulus, exponents, and more. There are various methods for arithmetic calculation in Python, like you can use the eval function, declare variables, and calculate or call functions. For your reference, we've created an example below. Can you give an example of logical operators? For your reference, we've created an example for logical operators. Can you explain membership operators in Python? Membership operators test for membership in a sequence such as a list, strings, or tuples. Two membership operators are used in Python, in, not in. It gives the results based on the variable present in a specified sequence or string. For your reference, we've created the examples. Could you write code to demonstrate operator precedence in Python? For your reference, we've created this example that demonstrates operator precedence in Python. Could you explain arrays in Python? A Python array is a collection of a common type of data structures having elements with the same data type. It is used to store collections of data. In Python programming, arrays are handled by the array module. If you create arrays using the array module, elements of the array must be of the same numeric type. We've included an example and syntax and a diagram for your reference. How can you access array elements? You can access any array item by using its index. We've included for your reference the syntax and an example. How can you insert elements in an array? Python array insert operations enables you to insert one or more items into an array at the beginning, end, or any given index of the array. This method expects two arguments, index and value. We've included the syntax and an example below. How can you delete elements in an array? With this operation, you can delete one item from an array by value. This method accepts only one argument, value. After running this method, the array items are rearranged and indices are reassigned. We've included the syntax and the example for your reference. How can you search and get the index of a value in an array? With this operation, you can search for an item in an array based on its value. This method accepts only one argument, the value. It is a non-destructive method, which means it does not affect the array values. We've included the syntax and an example for your reference. How can you reverse array in Python? You can use reverse to reverse array in Python. We've included an example for your reference. Can you give an example to convert array to Unicode? We've included the example below of converting array to Unicode for your reference. Can you give an example of a class in Python? For your reference, we've created the example of a class in Python. Explain inheritance in Python. Inheritance is a feature used in object-oriented programming. It refers to defining a new class with less or no modification to an existing class. The new class is called the derived class, and from one which is inherits is called the base. Python supports inheritance. It also supports multiple inheritances. A class can inherit attributes and behavior methods from another class called subclass or here class. We've included an example for your reference. Can you give an example of Python constructors? For your reference, we've included an example of Python constructors. How can you access values in string? Python does not support a character type. These are treated as strings of length 1, also considered as a substring. You can use square brackets for slicing along with index or indices to obtain a substring. We've included an example below. Explain all string operators. We've included the syntax, operator, description, and example for your reference. Can you give an example of the sleep function in Python? For your reference, we've included an example of the sleep function being used in Python. What is timer method in Python? Timer is a method available with threading, and it helps to get the same functionality as Python time sleep. We've included an example for your reference. Can you give an example of a calendar class? For your reference, we've given an example of the calendar class. Would you explain Python zip file? Python allows you to quickly create zip and tar archives. We can see some of those commands that would allow us to zip the entire directory and also give us control on the files that we want to archive. We've included the syntax for your reference. What are the common examples of exceptions in Python? The common examples of exceptions in Python are: number 1, division by 0. Number 2, accessing a file that does not exist. Number 3, addition of two incompatible types. Number 4, trying to access a non-existent index of a sequence. Number 5, removing the table from the disconnected database server. Can you explain important Python errors? The important Python errors are: number 1, arithmetic error; number 2, import error; and number 3, index error. Number 1, arithmetic error acts as a base class for all arithmetic exceptions. It is raised for errors in arithmetic operations. Number 2, import error is raised when you're trying to import a module which is not present. This kind of exception occurs if you have made a typing mistake in the module name or the module which is not present in the standard path. Number 3, an index error is raised when you try to refer to a sequence which is out of range. Would you explain JSON dumps in Python? JSON dumps in Python is a method that converts dictionary objects of Python into JSON string data format. It is useful when the objects are required to be in string format for the operations like parsing, printing, and so on. For your reference, we've included an example. Explain in detail JSON to Python decoding. JSON string decoding is done with the help of inbuilt methods JSON loads and JSON load of JSON library in Python. As we can see, for your reference, we have the translation table showing the JSON objects to Python objects, which is very helpful when performing decoding in Python of JSON strings. We also included an example for your reference. Could you write code using the encode method in Python? For your reference, we included an example with code for encode method in Python. Could you write a Python code for array in NumPy to create Python matrix? For your reference, we've created a code segment for array in NumPy to create Python matrix. Could you write a Python code for matrix subtraction? For your reference, we've created the code for a matrix subtraction. Could you write code for matrix multiplication? For your reference, we've created the code for the matrix multiplication. Would you explain slicing of matrix? Slicing will return the element from the matrix based on the start and index given. If the start index is not given, it is considered as 0. If the end is not passed, it will take as the length of the array. If the start end has negative values, the slicing will be done from the end of the array. We've included the syntax and an example of slicing of a matrix. Could you write Python code to find average via a loop? For your reference, we've created the Python code to find the average via a loop. Can you write a code for list count? For your reference, we've created the code for the list count. How can you count duplicate elements in a given list? For your reference, I've given an example of how to count duplicate elements in a given list. Can you write the code to get an index of an element in the list using the for loop. For your reference, we've created an element in the list using the for loop. Can you give an example of a Python type? For your reference, we're given an example of a Python type. Can you print without a new line in Python? From Python 3+, there is an additional parameter introduced for print called end. This parameter takes care of removing the new line that is added by default in print. We've included the example below for your reference. How can you print the star pattern without new line and space? We've included the code below that demonstrates how to print the star pattern without the new line and space.